Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Brands podcast. I'm your host, Bash Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. I appreciate all the love and support. Gracias a todos por sus apoyos. You can follow the podcast on all social media outlets on Instagram at the Social Work Brands podcast. That's all one word. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Social Work Rants, and hit the like button on Facebook, aka Meta. Type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that like button, and of course on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button. Type in the Social Work Rants podcast. All the videos every Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time debut episodes. Also on all your platforms. Rate the podcast, hit that like button, whatever audio platform you use. Definitely let me know what you think of these episodes. And again, I appreciate a little support. Um, Disclaimer: I always forget to do the the disclaimer, especially on the video side. Disclaimer: this episode is meant for educational purposes only. Some entertainment too. But this is not a substitute for mental health therapy. If you are in need of assistance or you're in crisis, please call 911. Go to your nearest emergency room. Call your therapist if you have one. Call your psychiatrist if you have one. For all my viewers and listeners out of the country, whatever your emergency service line or whatever number you have, use your emergency phone number for any emergencies you might be going through with a mental health crisis. And also in the US, you could dial 988 as well for any sort of assistance. That being said, finally able to connect with this young lady, social worker, Natalie Gutierrez. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm also glad we got to connect and that we're meeting today. So thank you.
Oh no, of course. We're gonna talk about navigating first year post grad. Talking to Natalie, we like to call her a baby social worker
Mhm.
in the space. Um, de- Definitely been trying to get tapping into having more quote unquote baby social workers into the space just to see like what's really out there. Was was being taught in grad school. We having these new social workers coming into the field, especially coming into the field in this post-COVID era that we in, and going to grad school during a pandemic. See what was that? Let's start with that. What was that like for you?
Oh boy. Of all the things I could have done during a pandemic, I decided like, let me apply for my MSW and let me just buckle up and like go for the ride. So everything was virtual. So my classes were virtual. So that was an adjustment, of course, like not being in a classroom anymore where I'm interacting with peers, with professors, like everything was done on a virtual platform. So that was very challenging for me as someone who struggles a little with ADHD. I was just like, man, I cannot keep staring at a screen all day. And then continuing the screen time to do papers and all my assignments. So that in itself, like just the platform was very hard. And then there was the issue with like field placements, which was something that was very huge. So an essential part of like the social work graduate experience is having those field placements both
Right.
years. But unfortunately, because I started right in 2020, right when the pandemic broke out, there was limitations and agencies were very limited on what social work interns they could take on. So the graduate school that I was attending had to kind of create this alternative like simulation course where we were
Mm,
basically taking an additional class instead of having like a field placement. So that was hard because I felt a little robbed and I felt like I was entering the fields with a disadvantage because I didn't have that first year generalist field placement that kind of like set the tone for me.
right.
So that was really hard. I was lucky enough that I was working at the time in the field, like as a case manager in social services, and I was exposed to doing things such as like groups and case management, which helped a lot. But if not, I feel like it would have been really hard, like transitioning into the field with that generalist field placement missing.
Let's. Do you mind sharing what's grad school was that?
Yes, so I actually left that grad school. That's
Uh,
another thing. Another part of my journey is I started at Silberman, which is the Hunter College School of Social Work. Um, but because of like the limitations with like when classes were offered, it was a lot of like daytime classes, and I was a full time working full time at an agency.
mm,
I decided to transfer to Fordham, graduate of social service, School of Social Service, and that's where I graduated from.
okay. Well, shout out to Fordham.
Yeah, shout out to Fordham. Hey.
um, so before we go further, let just people know like who you are, what you currently do, in this wonderful, fascinating field of social work.
Yes. So just a little bit about like background about me. I'm from born and raised in like Washington Heights and Inwood. So shout out to that area because that's a big part of the work I do and why I wanted to do this work. Come from a Dominican family. So I am a graduate of the Fordham School of Social Service. I'm a licensed master level social worker in the state of New York. And currently I am working in community-based outpatient mental health. So I'm working there, and I'm also working fee for service within a private practice. And this private practice is focused on providing therapy to children and teens and people of color as well. And my passion is working with youth, working with children, working with teenagers. So that's where I'm at right now. And I'm also running my Instagram page, which has been growing recently. And I connected with you through there actually,
Yes.
where I'm providing like a lot of psychoeducation. And I also provide like tips and insight on like my social work journey. Um, just as kind of like a platform where I can reach a lot of people. And social media is a great way these days to exchange like information. And I feel like having like positive mental health information and psychoeducation on Instagram is a really important thing as well.
Yeah, gotta love the beauty of social media if you know how to do it right. It's
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just to
Mhm.
connect, and then meeting people online, and then seeing them in person. It was like, oh snap. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's that person from LinkedIn or Instagram. Yeah.
Exactly, or you put the name with the face. So you just know people by their handle, and then like without knowing their actual name. So it's
Yes.
fascinating times
Absolutely.
that we live thanks to social media. So
Yeah.
that being said, I miss the Heights. Spent a lot of time watching some Heights.
Mhm.
Miss the food. This is one thing I miss
Oh,
about New
for
York
sure.
is the food. Going to the Heights. I think I was just there like a month ago. The Casa de Mofongo. Shout out to them.
Oh, I love that spot. That's like a childhood favorite.
Even though when I went, like, damn, the prices went up. they,
Everything's
they,
getting expensive. Like a patelito is like $3 these days when it used to be like $1.
this
Yeah,
inflation's kicking
nothing the
people
same.
kicking people's butt, and New York was already expensive as it is. So
Yeah.
no, but it's good. I know, and there's like definitely social service agencies in the Heights. They're like on the down low sometimes, unless you like somebody who knows somebody. They're like, oh yeah, like, but like if you walk the streets, it's like you'll literally pass a couple social service agencies, and then obviously there's a lot of need within the Heights. Like just Washington Heights and Inwood. There's just a lot of just different things that are happening in New York as a whole. I make no bones about it. On
Absolutely.
this podcast, with what the current mayor is doing, not doing, and what the past mayor didn't do. So New York
Absolutely.
is interesting
Mhm.
place in time. So what are you seeing in terms of like clients? You said you work with families, work with the kids. Like what are you currently seeing?
So I am seeing a lot of kids and teenagers with anxiety. So anxiety is the big thing right now. Like everybody is just feeling worried excessively, like just just this level of uncertainty that's been going on in the world for a few years with the pandemic and everything,
Mhm.
and kids like returning back to school in person. I feel like that uncertainty definitely had an impact where we're seeing so many like kids and teenagers with anxiety. And also, I've just been like in the agency that I'm working in right now, I've been seeing a lot of more folks of color, which is great. Um, it seems like there's more of an understanding of the need for therapy, and a lot of parents that I meet are very open to it and like trying to get these services for their children. So that's something that makes me very happy that I'm seeing like a lot of clients of my background, like Dominican, there's a lot of other Hispanic clients coming in because they're recognizing like I want to set a good foundation for my child. I want them to have a safe space where they can talk and they can receive the services that they truly need. So that's been, I think, something that I've been seeing a lot, and that's a good thing that it's taking a turn for the better.
No, absolutely, especially no, I guess my parents' generation is like we don't talk about these things, and it's like I guess no, my generation. I'm going to be 44 this year, and it's like my generation is like, all right, we need to be talking about whatever is happening, and it's slowly because we, I still have like the old school
Mhm.
mentality mixed with what's going on, and try to change with the times. So it's definitely I'm glad like the younger generation kind of like parents. Okay, no, it's no. My kid needs help, or like, or even I need help, and like, let me go find somebody, talk to somebody, and you're right. There is a lot of uncertainty going on. We got inflation, we got recession that the federal government refuses to talk about. We got this. We now seeing the after effects of what COVID has done, and not a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of behaviors kind of already started before COVID, and like COVID exacerbated everything, and now we got collective PTSD,
Yes.
collective grief, not only of loved ones, but just like connection and people lost like social skills within like the last couple of years. It's just a gamut of different things that kind of happen all at once. People losing jobs, people like losing housing or about to lose housing. Now this whole Medicaid recertifications that are starting to happen now. So with the federal government cutting, ending the COVID emergency. So like people are back to pre-COVID food stamp levels, which wasn't much to begin with, and reapplying for Medicaid. So I did a whole episode about that. So go back to listen to that. So it's like you're right. There is a lot to be anxious about. A lot of anxiety in the world, both kids and adults, and I'm sure adults unintentionally sometimes like to put their own anxieties on the kids, or the kids see that and see the parents. So like, all right, I guess you gotta be anxious too. So
Yeah, they pick up on it. And
yeah.
I like how you mentioned like a lot of parents too, like you said, like they will have their child in therapy and they'll see how beneficial it is. And I've had a lot of parents in that moment, like after seeing their child go through the process, well, they'll say and admit to themselves, like maybe this is something that is helpful, will be helpful for me as well. And maybe it won't be so bad after all, and I can give it a chance as well. So I've seen a lot of parents too come to that realization, where they're like, yeah, I think it's time for me to try this as well. And they're doing that through their kids and like seeing their kids go to therapy. So it's great. It seems like post pandemic, there's still very much like mental health stigma, especially in like Latinx community and
Mhm.
communities of color. But it seems like post COVID, there's kind of like this, I guess, growth in like acceptance towards therapy and saying like we just went through this really tough experience, like you said, collective grief, collective trauma. It's okay to seek help and to need these services.
And speaking of all that, just a
Yes.
segue. I'll be doing a speaking engagement, May 3rd. Talking about thriving through grief. Myself, Elizabeth Conte. I'll put the link in the show notes. Definitely, everybody come out and support. And definitely is things to talk about. We get that all that stuff out into the open. The importance of talk about grief and loss with Mental Health Awareness Month coming up in May. So it's definitely important to get that out. And it's great, like you sharing. Um, People in the community realizing they need mental health services and seeking mental health services, for themselves with everything that's been going on.
Absolutely.
That so you met. So what? Going back to grad school real quick, like so you had an extra class for one of your internship. What like yeah was did you were you able to get a eventual internship? Like what happened with that?
So that was our whole first year. We had to do that additional class.
Mm,
So not only was it like we're missing out on internship for a whole academic year, we're also taking an additional class on top of the 4 classes that we already take as full-time students. So
mm,
it like was a burden in a way because we felt like we're being cheated and also being like punished in a way because we're getting all this extra work that we have to do that some other students did get field placements. So that also created a sense of like inequality where it's like you have students that have these field placements that are so like sought after, and then the other students that just kind of had to settle with that extra course. So that
mm,
caused a lot of like it stirred up a lot, and there was like movements from students like we didn't want this, we are paying tuition dollars, we should be placed, or at least you guys should be moving towards getting us placed in the springtime and have this temporarily.
right.
And it felt like those concerns weren't really heard. And we kind of just had to stick it out and do the course for the whole year. And it looked like for the first half, we would do like role plays basically, where we would work with another student in Zoom in like a breakout room and do like a role play session. Um, and then the next semester was just like assignments and like then with the role plays we had to do like process recordings with all the social workers out there know their process recordings is like the worst possible thing, like worst possible thing.
It's and to
So
do
we
it
had to
and to do it
go.
on the based on the Zoom call too. Oh my God, that's torture.
Yes. Yeah, so that was our field placement for a year. And I'm not sure if that was specific to that school and what other social work schools were doing, but they tried to like tell us. It was like kind of like gaslighting, like, yeah, all the other social work schools are doing this too.
Mm.
But us as students were like, there has to be like another way that we can
And
get
this
this
and this was at
experience.
Silverman.
Yes, yes,
Oh damn! I
yes.
I understand you're a city school, and it's hard. It's hard to get into a school that's hard to get into compared to like
Mhm.
Fordham or another grad school in New York, and for them to do that, and then like you said, taking your money, like they'll take your money real quick, but not give you that experience. That's terrible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was very prestigious school. Like the program and the professors are great. It was just that field experience that was so hard to navigate in the pandemic, and they were having really a difficult time adjusting and giving us the field placement or experience that we deserved as social work students that were paying tuition dollars and that also just were very committed. And we decided to do this during a really difficult time, so we were hoping that we would be met halfway by the school and provided the resources that we needed to undergo like the challenge that is grad school in such like a crazy time. So we were hoping to be met with some things and we weren't. So that created a lot of frustration. And that was, I would say, really, really the most challenging part for me of navigating grad school in the pandemic.
Yeah, grad schools are already
Yes. Mhm.
already challenging to say the least. Not I couldn't even imagine myself going to grad school
Mhm.
during COVID. It was bad enough working full time
Mhm.
and everything that I was going through at that time. So, uh, I mean, at least you're glad you did it. It's over. You got your degree. You got your license. Like how was studying for the license for you?
Oh, that was a whole other thing too. The licensing exam is just very like expensive. So
Yes.
this is for any social workers listening that are on the verge of graduating, prepare them wallets, like prepare the wallet because it's a fee of like 275 just to submit an application and then another fee of like 275 just to take like to book a test date, which is costly. It's very costly in this economy. Like asking somebody to put down $500 to take a test that they may or may not pass is that right there creates like inequality in a way.
No,
And
absolutely.
then, and then there's just the fact that for myself, I am someone who has struggled over like the course of my academic career with test taking. So I was anxious. I don't really believe in standardized testing. I don't believe it measures people's intelligence or their ability to do the job or be a good social worker. So I had to put a lot of work into my studying. I studied for 3 months over the summertime. So I started studying in about July, I believe, and studied until September, October, to take my exam in October. And so my studying looked like basically over the summer, locking myself in my room and kind of just doing Pocket Prep, which is this app that has like
Mm,
questions. It was very helpful for me. The Don Apgar book was also really helpful. It has like practice questions, and it's kind of a big book that has everything that we went over in the graduate program all in one place. So that was very helpful for me as well. And I did do the social work exam boot camp 1 day workshop where it's like an 8 day workshop where they teach you skills to take the test and break down the questions. And they also go over content too. That I feel like was essential for me because my mind isn't really trained to take like standardized testing and I don't do very well on testing. So learning like the format of the test and ways to break down the questions was really like essential for me. And then the biggest tip I will give to any social worker who's like preparing for this exam is to invest, if you can, in the ASWB practice test that's online. So I paid about $80 for that, and I took it in a sitting. Same, it looks like exact same as the exam the day that you go take it, like the format and everything. So it helped ease my anxiety, and it even provides you with like a score at the end. So just having that simulation of this is what the test will be like, it
mm.
helped me feel so much more confident and so much less anxious on the day of the test. And I feel like that really, really helped me in passing the exam.
Yeah, that's definitely good tips. Shout out to Dr. Shapiro. We New Yorkers call it the boot camp. So, um, and she's been on the podcast. I think that's actually the most viewed video on the YouTube channels. So, we went on. Her doing like she did a whole pivot, like doing everything online, and definitely used to do in-person classes. So I was
Mhm.
one of her students. So
Nice.
and the Pocket Prep was definitely helpful. Like just basically download the app and
Mhm.
answer questions on your phone, which is no convenient. Like have a break instead of going on
Yes.
Instagram or Twitter or BS, and you just take a
Yeah.
couple questions and see if you got it right or not, and they'll give you the answer if you got it wrong and explain it to you. So it's a good app. Pocket Prep, you love to want to sponsor the podcast by all means. I no, but seriously, it's definitely was good the few times I've downloaded in the past. So um, yeah, so if I'm glad you passed.
Thank
That,
you.
that was so it's like you and I'm definitely a strong advocate, against the exam. You're right; it doesn't cover your competence in the field. Like you like went to school, She's supposed to have two internships during school. I know with COVID and your story that didn't happen, but
Mhm.
normally you have the two internships to go to 2 years, 2 to 3 years, maybe up to 4 years of school and classes, and yet not everything in grad school. At least when I went, it's going to lead to like real life. What happens in the field once you're in there, but at least give you some sort of background into it. So definitely, and shout out to all these different states that are like refusing or stopping MSW students that they don't have to take the initial licensing exam because you're right, it is
Mhm.
money. I know for myself, like, all right, I'm gonna use some of this tax money, put it aside, and
Yes.
I'm gonna take this test, and that's my one shot for the year. Then I'm gonna have to wait a whole year to because financial I couldn't afford it. So why you had to pay the 275 twice? That's just to register for it, like
That
a registration fee for like the
I was mind
application
blown. Yeah, it was like an application fee that you send to New York Office of Professions, and then you get approved after that. They're like, okay, you're approved to take the test. Now pay another 275 to
to
take
the
the
actual
actual test.
ASWB.
Yes.
Damn, New York State,
Yeah.
you're robbing the students. Like,
They are, yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay, this one time fee, that's it. And then they're like, yeah, you need to pay an additional 275 to book your test. I was like, this is
Because
crazy. This is a business.
when I took the test, I paid the 275 for the ASWB and then like another 75 just to
Mhm,
register, and then that's it. You only pay unless New Jersey changed it.
mhm,
Uh, it was a one time fee. Like you never had to pay again. You just have to like make sure like if you fail it, and you got to make sure you renew the ASWB. Like you could take it up to like 3 times. Like if you take it, you plan it out. You could
mhm,
take the exam up to maybe like three different times if you had to in one full calendar year, and then that's it. You just paid, unfortunately, paid the 275 all over again. But not this 275 twice. That's absolutely ridiculous, especially in
yes.
recession and paying like $9 for eggs and stuff,
Yeah.
especially in New York too. New York
Yes.
is hella expensive. Why I left.
Yes. And also it's just there are materials that go into studying too.
Mhm.
The Don Apgar book, I had to purchase that. The Pocket Prep app is not free. You know, everything is money. You have to pay for everything, even the resources
Yeah,
that you
the
use to
dorm
prepare.
book's expensive too, and people either love it or don't like it.
Yeah.
So you just kind of taking your chances of what kind of works and what you see, what you hear, what the people study differently. So like, their study habits are different, and just the way they learn is different. So whatever, all these different things that are out there doesn't work for everybody. You can try them all, and it could still unfortunately fail the exam. So it's an unfortunate situation that we in the social field go through and have to do, and or don't have to do because we're learning now. We can all these different jobs that you could get with an MSW without being licensed, but it's like
Absolutely.
these different states are making it hard. Like and grad schools make it hard. Like, okay, you got to get licensed. So it's like this tug of war. This like I call it like the civil war within social work
Mhm,
regarding this. Um, so going back to like your jobs that you do. You
mhm.
mentioned a lot of people are anxious about the unknown. Tell me more about the kiddos, because I know working as a school social worker definitely saw like kids just anxious, coming back into the school building. Some of them for like the first time ever, and other times for the first time in 2 years, and like see a piece of paper, like some classwork on their desk, and they want to flip chairs and flip tables and stuff.
Yes.
So, what are you seeing with the kiddos?
Yeah, so a lot of like kids are having difficulty with like attention span, and that's because they were doing schooling via Zoom for some time and they necessarily weren't in the classroom anymore. So their attention like out of their control, of course. If they're doing school at home, they're going to be distracted with other things.
Mm,
So that they're carrying it back into the classroom in returning back to school. And a lot of kids are displaying like difficulty with attention span, difficulty with socialization as well. Like you mentioned, a lot of kids don't know how to make friends. Like I'll it's so adorable and sad at the same time when kids will tell me like, can you help me with tips? I'm struggling like to make other friends. And it's a lot of it is because of that time that they didn't have within the school buildings and with their peers. So they're kind of getting back into the rhythm of things. And yeah, it was just a lot of challenges. And being an adolescent these days is very, very difficult. Like there is a lot of like the kids right now are doing standardized tests.
mhm,
So, they have to, the same way we have to do the standardized test, they also have these expectations
mhm,
as little kids. And I think back to it and thinking about all the standardized testing I had to do as like a kid. And it's just so unrealistic to have kids doing these back to back like marathon tests. And they're just under so much pressure these days. And that's a lot of that is the pressure. Um, just the attention span, struggles with attention span, the anxiety that I'm seeing a lot of. I think those are the main things that I've noticed in my work with kids. And a lot of kids are grieving too. Like a lot of kids lost family members during the pandemic and they don't really understand what it was that happened.
mhm.
So, kind of providing that psychoeducation to them on grief and what was the pandemic, how did that experience change the course of their lives. And so that's another thing going in with a lot of kids. Like they lost a lot of family members and they still don't really understand why.
Yeah, it's almost like kind of leaves you speechless because it's like pandemic happened and you're right. I think it was like I know I did a statistic a while ago about I saw maybe like 1 in 5, like some outstanding number of kids that like lost a caretaker during COVID, and it's and like the school, and it's like I worked in the school, and it's like kind of going back to like pre-COVID, like not like we didn't go through a pandemic. It's like all these expectations of like okay, school rules and like do this, do that, and like kids not liking art, not liking gym, or not liking music class, and it was like it was just interesting to see. And then I've heard things depending where you work at or what state you're in that things have only gotten worse. So it hasn't gotten better, and it's in the schools in some places. So it's just real interesting to kind of see and navigate and with these kids and the grief and loss that's like years like people need to continue to talk about. This is just years and years and years and yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot going on, and I hope these schools like they use have all these days for just training days for teachers and stuff, and I hope they're maximizing it with some SEL because the teachers are needed, just all the staff needed from like the janitor all the way up. So it's
Yes, absolutely.
a fascinating time that we live in.
Yes.
Um, I don't know how much politics you're into, but what are your thoughts on clubbing Mayor Adams?
I just every time I see something about him, it's him like working out or like at a park, like doing pull-ups or like going to a club, and it's like, don't you have a job to do? And like that's all I have to say. It's like every time I see him, it's like he's doing something other than being a mayor to New York City. So yeah, that is my observations and my personal feelings about our mayor.
Uh, no, it's sad. It's sad to see because New York, to me, and New York really struggle with De Blasio. Even though I'm grateful to him, we'll always
Yes.
be grateful for the pre-K, the 4-year-old.
Boys, yeah.
Yes, that really helped. But besides that, like it was just all these, and it's just nationwide, all these high rises that are being built, all this gentrification stuff, and black and brown folks not getting a piece of that pie, and so people being priced out, being forced to move out, and it's just a lot kind of going on, and like low undercover deals to these developers to build these skyscrapers that the politicians are doing. So it's a hot mess. The city, not only the city, but just the country as a whole. And I really haven't heard anything from the federal government what they trying to do to try to really help the people.
Yeah, I feel like the quality of life overall in like New York City has decreased a lot. So like it used to be such a desirable place where everyone wanted to live because there is like a lot of great work opportunity in New York City, but it just feels like the quality of life is no longer there. Like there's so much like gun violence and crime post pandemic and during the pandemic, all the crime and people aren't feeling safe. Like there's been like mass like relocations, people just
Mhm.
saying, let's go to Florida, let's go to these states. It's warm,
Mhm.
it's like safer, better education for my kids. It's just like the quality of life has gone down extremely in New York City. I feel like that's a sentiment, and it kind of also has to do with like the leadership, like you said, like clubbing Mayor Adams, and like you mentioned, these high rises, which is causing gentrification, and putting in money into making like revamping train stations instead of putting money into other resources for like the children, for education. It just seems like every day it's like, oh, here's a fancy new train station, but it's like what else are we getting? We want resources, we want homeless people off the streets and into housing programs. Like we want
Mhm.
better education for the kids, more safety. But it's just like they're distracting us with these like shiny buildings and shiny train stations.
Mhm. No, absolutely. It's just a lot, and I see it here in Delaware too. I've had clients asking me for housing, and it's like
Mhm.
I can't help you. Like it's
Mhm.
like all these single family homes and townhomes are building, and like need just resources. It's like it's really a nationwide kind of crisis going on. So it's and unfortunately, what's going to like I said, us black and brown folks like are going to be struggling the most unless we're able to save up some money or some way to try to get into real estate or something. That's like kind of like the only way we're going to be able to like kind of get in the trenches, so to speak, in terms of
Yeah.
try to put a dent into try to help our community out.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
um so what so be so you seen anything in terms of kids related with social media? Because I talk to my kids all the time. I was like, we didn't have any of this stuff. We either stayed inside or we went outside and played all day and with our friends and stuff. Like we just had like the first official Game Boy. We had like a Nintendo 64, like the original. Like there wasn't any social media. There was barely wasn't even internet. Like when I was the internet was not a thing when I was a kid. So it was like me trying to explain that to my kids, and now we have kids being bullied, and that leads to online and social media, then leads to school, and the same kids that are bullying them on social media, they go to the same school, and it continues into the school, then it goes back out again. So, like, do you see any of that stuff?
Absolutely. So just like the attachments to phones and social media, it's like I see you in our session scrolling through TikTok. Like you can wait 45 minutes to get back on TikTok. TikTok will still be there. So it's like this dependence on like their phones and social media. And it gets dangerous because they get a lot of like information from there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is like misinformed. It's not coming from the right people. And so for kids that they are like sponges that like soak it all up and
Mm-hmm.
believe what they're reading and seeing, it becomes dangerous kind of how exposed they are to social media. And also there's a lot of like mental health information out there that is also like I've seen kids use. So they'll see like they'll see a TikTok about someone talking about their experience with a mental illness like OCD, for example, or anxiety, and they'll be like, oh, I have that. I'm self-diagnosing myself with this. I'm going to tell my therapist that I have this because I saw it on TikTok. So it's like so much misinformation being spread, and because like they're younger and not able to filter like what is real, what isn't,
Mm-hmm.
what is correct, what's incorrect, they're believing it and they're, taking it as truth. So that's one thing. And like you mentioned with the bullying too, I was also working in a school setting prior to my current job. So I know like the drama that goes on online. They bring it into school and they're like, did you see what this person posted about me on their story? And it's just like they have so much more, like so much more can go wrong with the social media added into the picture, which is
Mm.
scary.
It
And
is.
there are things that like concerning things that students even post on social media, then as social workers come back to us, like students saying like, oh, this student posted this and it was very concerning on social media, and us as social workers, we kind of have to like step in because now we have this platform where students can also share really concerning things and like bring about like concerning stuff with like their mental health and that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a scary time,
Mm-hmm.
both in social workers, as us as parents, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
all. I think parenting. I think I found myself parenting way harder than I did when the kids. At least my kids were younger,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I had a hard time back then. So it was like it's just a lot going on, and no wonder people are anxious and struggling right now. So.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you what do you see next for you? Like you just into first couple years into the field. Like what is it that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when I came into the field, I had my mind set on being a school social worker. I took a school social work class my very last semester, and I like just fell in love with the way it was portrayed and the way my professor portrayed. I see you laughing at that, at the way it was portrayed, and like my professor talked about her work. But then I realized that if you want to be a social worker in New York City through the DOE, you don't get clinical hours. So that is
Mm,
something very important for me that I'm looking for, is to eventually obtain my LCSW, because that opens up a lot of opportunities.
mm-hmm,
So DOE school social work was kind of out of the question because it would not provide me with the clinical hours that I needed. So I went through the route of working through a nonprofit in a school setting, which also has its challenges. So I was responding to the school staff, to the staff of my nonprofit, and there was a lot of times like competing values and priorities. And it ended up being like just a lot for me to handle. And I left that job and I was like, never again school social work, not doing this. But then I realized how diverse like the field of social work is, that one school isn't going to set the tone for the experience for that I would have in any other school. Like that school and that culture of that school, that does not mean I will have that experience in other schools. So I do I love working with kids. I love working with youth. So I do see myself going back to school social work. Just need to like take my time and find like the right school environment for me that feels like supportive, that has really good leadership, and where I feel like the students are the priority. Um, so that's one big thing, is I think I eventually will make my way back to being a school social worker. And hopefully like these next few years, I've been working as a clinician right now, obtaining my LCSW, so obtaining the hours over the next like 2 years or so to get that certification. And I'm also just someone who really like values education and learning and growing. So I do see myself, and I'm a workaholic too, like that's another thing. I do see myself going back to school, um, and pursuing like a DSW, like Doctorate of Social Work, because I just feel like there's still so much out there for me to learn and so much more I want to do in the field of social work. And there's so many opportunities, and I just want to continue that and further my education as well.
no, yeah, that's a lot of great goals. You hit my experience to the T regarding the
Yeah.
school social work position.
Yes.
I was like, no mas, I'm not doing this again. So,
Yes.
but yeah, like people either love it or they don't. So it's definitely an experience. And, I'm grateful for the experience because I know that another thing that I don't want to do in the field. So
Yeah.
no, it is what it is. So where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Natalie Marie Gutierrez, full government name, LMSW. You can also find me on my Instagram page where I share mental health content, which is at Healing Corner with Nat. Um, and then also I also share on my mental health page the private practice that I work for, which is called Orchard Blue Counseling Services. Um, so clients, anyone interested in seeing me or being a client can find me on their website as well.
Oh, you
And
take a patients?
I think I have space for two clients at this
Okay.
time. Yes. So I do have space for
They
two
got to be
clients.
in New York.
Yes. I
Okay.
believe actually I'll have to get back on that because my supervisor, who's an LCSW, is licensed in several states.
Mm.
So I'll get back with more information on that. But New York State clients definitely.
All right, that's good to know because people
Yes.
people are struggling. They need all the help they can get, and there's
Yes.
wait lists everywhere. So it's like
Oh yes,
you
there
can get
is.
in and see clients. No, that's great info. Thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best. You have a ally with me. By all
Thank
means,
you.
hit me up if you have any questions or just anything you want to chit chat, BS, whatever. It's just I'm all ears.
Of course. And thank you for this platform, like allowing me to come on and other social workers. It gives people like me who are just starting out opportunity to hear from people like you who've worked in so many different like capacities in social work, and just hearing from other like mental health professionals doing the work is really inspiring and it's really helpful. So thank you for this platform that you've created.
Thank you. The
Yes.
definitely we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much.